The scream echoed down the hallway like a siren in slow motion. Sharp. Hollow. Haunting. Nurses turned their heads from behind the reception desk, startled. Two of them abandoned the charting station and rushed into room 407, expecting to see a heart monitor flatlining, a code blue called, a man crumbling at the edge of death. What they found instead was Ethan Hayes, standing absolutely still, eyes locked on a yellowed, crinkled paper in his trembling hand. His face, drained of all color, wasn't the face of a man grieving a dying parent. It was the face of a man who had just learned that everything he believed about his life had been a lie. His mother, Linda, lay silent on the hospital bed beside him. Her breath, barely audible, rasped through the oxygen mask. She hadn't stirred in nearly an hour, and the doctors said she might not wake again. Ethan didn't even glance at the nurses. His entire focus was on that letter. More specifically, the last line written at the bottom of the page, in his mother's familiar script. "If he ever finds out you know the truth, run." That sentence alone shattered every last thread of logic holding him together. He folded the paper with shaking fingers, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and slowly lowered himself into the chair beside the bed. His legs felt hollow, like scaffolding ready to collapse. She'd been trying to protect him, even now, as her body surrendered to cancer. But protect him from what? Or from whom? Just 2 hours earlier, Ethan had been sitting in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel of his car with both hands. He'd been parked outside for 36 minutes, debating whether to go in or turn around and leave. The truth was, he hadn't seen his mother in over 6 months, not since the fight. It wasn't one of those mild arguments people eventually laugh about. This one had ruptured everything. Years of simmering resentment, emotional wounds, and blame for things neither could say out loud. Ethan had left her house that night feeling more orphaned than ever, and he had promised himself he wouldn't go back. Not even for birthdays. Not even for holidays. Then the call came. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Months, maybe weeks left. And guilt, unwelcome, sticky, relentless, had pulled him back. Still, when he stepped into her room, he hadn't expected anything. She'd been fading fast, barely coherent for the past few days. But somehow, that afternoon, she opened her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered, voice dry like paper. He moved closer, confused. "Mom?" She blinked, pain flickering behind her eyes. "Bottom, left, drawer. My purse. There's a letter." His brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Her voice turned to a rasp. "Don't read it now. Read it, when I'm gone." Then she closed her eyes again and didn't speak another word. When she drifted back into unconsciousness, curiosity got the better of him. He reached down and unzipped the purse at the side of the bed. Pulling out a small leather envelope that looked old and slightly bent at the corners. It had his name on the front, written in her elegant, looping handwriting. He hesitated. Even then, some part of him knew this wasn't going to be a typical letter. This wasn't going to be apologies or last-minute expressions of love. There was something urgent about her voice. Something afraid. Still, he opened it. What he found inside wasn't a goodbye. It was a confession. "Ethan. If you're reading this, it means I've gone, and I couldn't bring myself to say these words to your face. But you deserve the truth. Even if it shatters everything. You were never supposed to find out. Not like this. But I don't want to die with this secret. Not anymore. The man you think is your father, isn't. He never was. Your real father's name is Samuel Grayson. He was dangerous, Ethan. Charming at first, but with a darkness I didn't see until it was too late. I left when you were still a baby. I changed our names. I moved across the country. I did everything I could to protect you. But lately, I think someone has been watching me. I've seen the same black car outside more than once. If he's alive, and if he finds out you know who he is, run. Don't ask questions. Don't go looking. Just run." Ethan stared at the words, trying to breathe, trying to blink his way into reality. This wasn't some late-life delusion. His mother was sharp as ever before the cancer. And this wasn't vague. This was detailed. Real. And terrifying. A car outside? A man named Samuel Grayson? His real father? He felt like a kid again, 10 years old, sneaking into the basement, convinced something was hiding in the shadows. Only now, the fear wasn't childish. It was real. And it was aimed at him. The name Samuel Grayson sparked something familiar, but distant. Like a half-forgotten dream. Then, like lightning, a memory hit him. He was maybe 6. Playing in the backyard with toy cars. His mom had been planting flowers near the fence. A man, tall, well-dressed, wearing sunglasses, had come up to the gate. His mother froze when she saw him. They didn't speak loud enough for him to hear, but the man looked at him, just once, then turned and walked away. That night, his mother locked every window, drew every curtain, and made him sleep in her bed. She never explained why. Now he knew. Ethan rose from the chair and walked out of the hospital room in a daze. He didn't hear the nurses. Didn't see the other visitors. His feet moved on their own. Outside, the cold air slapped him awake. He leaned against the brick wall of the building and pulled out his phone. He typed, "Samuel Grayson." Dozens of results appeared. Most were ordinary: a retired lawyer in Minnesota, a pastor in New Jersey, a carpenter in Colorado. But one entry caught his eye. A man named Samuel Grayson, former private military contractor. Discharged in the early 90s. Never married. Arrested in 2002 for aggravated assault in Illinois. The mugshot was grainy. But the eyes. They were his own. The man in the black sedan didn't move. He just sat there. Engine running. Watching. Ethan stood on the curb, heart thudding in his ears, unsure if he was imagining things or if his mother's warning was coming to life right in front of him. He squinted at the windshield, but the glare of the sun masked the man's face. Still, Ethan felt it: he was being watched. He didn't move. Neither did the car. Then, slowly, the sedan rolled forward, eased into the street, and disappeared around the corner without so much as a turn signal. Ethan didn't chase it. He didn't take a photo. He didn't even move for a full minute. His body was frozen, mind screaming with 1,000 questions and one single terrifying truth. Someone knows he read the letter. Back inside the hospital, the world felt heavier, quieter. His mother hadn't moved. Her chest still rose and fell in slow, shallow patterns. The machines hummed, indifferent to the storm unraveling inside Ethan's head. He stared at her for a long time. This woman, his mother, had lied to him for decades. She'd raised him alone, taught him to ride a bike, to tie a tie, to bury his emotions and keep moving forward. But she'd also kept his father a secret. Changed their names. Built an entire life on a foundation of fear. Why? Why now? Why only tell him on her deathbed? And most of all, what had this Samuel Grayson done that made her run across the country and erase their past? He looked down at the letter again, reading it for the 5th time, hoping it would somehow say more than it had before. But it didn't. It ended the same way, with the same blood-freezing line. If he ever finds out you know the truth, run. That night, Ethan didn't go home. He couldn't. He checked into a small motel 2 towns over, a half-hour drive from the hospital. It wasn't fear exactly. It was instinct. Some primal part of him that told him someone was watching. That the man in the sedan wasn't just a passing stranger. He locked the door, drew the curtains, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his laptop. His hands hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to search again, more about Samuel Grayson. But his mother's words echoed in his mind. Don't go looking. Just run. But how could he run from something he didn't understand? He started with public records. There were several Samuel Graysons across the U.S., but most were easily ruled out. Too old, too young, wrong race, wrong location. Then he found a document that made his breath catch. A court filing from 1992 in Pennsylvania. A restraining order filed by a woman named Linda Hayes, his mother's current name. But back then, she'd used the last name, Grayson. His mother had been married to this man. No mention of Ethan's name. Just, a minor child. The report was brief, clinical. It stated that the respondent, Samuel Grayson, had exhibited signs of mental instability, aggressive behavior, and made repeated threats toward the petitioner. The order was granted. 3 years later, the record went quiet. No further court documents. No divorce paperwork. No custody battle. Nothing. It was as if his mother had vanished. Which, Ethan now understood, she had. He didn't sleep that night. Every noise outside the motel made him flinch. A door slam, a car alarm, even footsteps in the hallway, they all made his skin prickle. He woke up the next morning with a splitting headache and a decision. He had to talk to someone who knew. And there was only one person left who might. Her name was Margaret Langley, his mother's oldest friend. Growing up, Ethan remembered Aunt Maggie as a constant presence. Summer cookouts. Sleepovers at her cottage. Birthday parties with her homemade cakes. But she'd stopped coming around when Ethan was about 12. At the time, he thought it was just life, people drift. Now he wondered if she knew the truth and had backed away to protect herself. He found her number online. Listed under a boutique antique shop in Asheville, about 60 miles north. He called. The voice that answered was older, roughened by time, but unmistakably hers. Maggie Langley, she said. He hesitated. Hi. Aunt Maggie? It's Ethan. Ethan Hayes. There was silence on the other end. Then, Ethan? My God. Is everything okay? No, he said. It's about my mom. She's dying. Another pause. Softer now. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. There's something else, he said. Something I need to ask you in person. About my father. The silence returned. But this time it felt loaded. Can you come today? She asked finally. Before sunset. The drive to Asheville was mostly empty roads and long stretches of farmland. Ethan watched the rearview mirror the entire time. No black sedans. No cars trailing him for too long. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being followed by silence. Margaret's antique shop sat on the corner of a sleepy little street that hadn't changed since the early 90s. The bell above the door jingled when he entered. She looked almost exactly the same, just older. Same tight silver bun. Same warm eyes, though now shaded with caution. You look just like him, she whispered as soon as she saw him. Ethan's stomach twisted. You knew, he said. I suspected, she admitted. But your mother made me promise never to talk about it. She's dying, he said again, this time like a plea. And she told me, things. But not enough. I need to know who he is. What he did. Margaret led him to the back room, where a small table sat beside shelves filled with dusty books. She poured 2 cups of tea. You were born in Ohio, she said, but your mother told everyone you were from Kansas. You were barely 2 when she left Samuel. She showed up at my door in the middle of the night, shaking, bruised. Said she couldn't go to the police. Said he had connections. Connections? Ethan asked. Private military work. Paramilitary, actually. Off-the-books stuff. She told me he'd been part of things she wasn't supposed to know about. That he'd made people disappear. That he liked the idea of control. Ethan's heart raced. So why didn't she ever tell me? Margaret looked at him over the rim of her teacup. Because he said if she did, he'd kill you. Ethan stared at her, stunned into silence. He told her that directly, he finally asked. Margaret nodded. She didn't tell me everything, but she told me enough. He never wanted a family. Said you were a mistake. But when he realized how attached your mother was to you, he saw a way to control her. Ethan felt sick. He was obsessed with her, Margaret continued. Wouldn't let her go. So she ran. Changed your names. Moved constantly those first few years. She said she saw a car recently. Black. Watching the house. Margaret's face turned pale. That means he found her. Ethan's pulse jumped. Why now? After all this time? Maybe she left something behind, Margaret said. Or maybe he never stopped looking. Just waited. Then she looked at him carefully. Did you read the letter? Ethan nodded. Her eyes darkened. Then he might be watching you now. Ethan's heart pounded as he stood frozen in front of Margaret Langley's shop. The black sedan was still parked across the street, the engine running. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a long shadow over the quiet town of Asheville. The world felt still, too still. For a moment, it seemed like the car was a trick of his mind, an overactive imagination running wild after days of paranoia and dread. But then, a figure stepped out from behind the sedan and moved toward him. A tall man. Dark clothing. His face was mostly obscured by the shadows of his wide-brimmed hat. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Was this him? The man didn't walk like someone out for a casual stroll. His movements were deliberate, controlled, almost predatory. The kind of movement that made the hairs on the back of Ethan's neck stand up. Ethan glanced over his shoulder at the antique shop's door, still ajar. He could feel Margaret watching him through the windows, but there was no time to think about that now. He needed to make a decision. Was this the man who had been hunting his family for years? Was this the same Samuel Grayson his mother had tried so desperately to protect him from? The man's footsteps grew louder, each one echoing in Ethan's mind like a drumbeat. He didn't know what to do. Should he run? He took a step back, but his feet were stuck to the ground, as if the earth beneath him had suddenly turned to stone. The man's voice broke through the silence. You Ethan Hayes? Ethan's breath caught in his chest. His pulse quickened. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood there, trying to gauge the man's intentions. The figure took another step closer, his face now fully visible. He was in his mid-40s, maybe early 50s, with sharp, angular features and dark eyes that seemed to absorb the fading light of the day. A small scar ran along the left side of his jaw, barely noticeable at first but distinct enough to unsettle anyone who looked for too long. Ethan's mind raced. He should have recognized those eyes. But it wasn't until the man spoke again that Ethan's stomach twisted with recognition. Your mother spoke of you. She said you'd come looking for answers. Ethan's thoughts froze. Who are you? The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was cold, calculating. You don't recognize me, do you? He asked, his voice low and gravelly. Ethan could feel the adrenaline surging through his veins, his body screaming at him to run. But instead, he stayed rooted to the spot, locked in this bizarre confrontation. The man took another step forward, his expression unreadable. "I'm Samuel Grayson." The name hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Samuel Grayson. His mind flashed back to the letter, the one his mother had written on her deathbed. The words his mother had whispered to him, urging him to run, to hide. The same man who had haunted his childhood, never once fully present but always looming in the background of his life, like a shadow he couldn't shake off. This was the man. The man responsible for his mother's fear. The reason she'd hidden from the world, the reason she'd never let Ethan know the truth. Ethan's legs felt like lead, but somehow, he managed to force a few words out. "You're my father?" He couldn't believe he was asking. He didn't want to ask. He didn't want this to be true. Samuel's smile twisted into something darker. "That's one way to put it. But your mother never gave me the chance to be a father, did she?" Ethan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I don't know what game you're playing, but stay away from me." The man chuckled darkly, a sound that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. "Game? Son, this isn't a game. This is reality. And you're about to learn the truth." A cold wind swept through the street, ruffling Ethan's hair and sending a chill through his bones. The man stepped closer, almost too close, and Ethan could feel the suffocating weight of his presence. "You're asking questions about things you don't understand. Things your mother tried to keep from you. But she was never strong enough to keep the truth hidden forever. And now I'm here to make sure you don't make the same mistakes she did." Ethan didn't back down, though his mind raced. "What are you talking about? What truth?" Samuel's eyes narrowed. "Your mother didn't leave because she was scared. She left because she was ashamed. She had a secret. A secret that's been haunting both of us for years." Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. "What secret?" The man's lips curled into a twisted grin. "You really want to know? Or would you rather stay in the dark? The choice is yours, Ethan." The words hung in the air, thick with menace. Ethan could feel his body tensing, every muscle screaming for him to run, to get away from this man who clearly held so many answers, but who seemed willing to destroy everything in his path. "I want to know," Ethan said, his voice tight with anger and fear. Samuel nodded slowly. "Very well. Your mother was never the woman you thought she was. She wasn't just running from me. She was running from something much bigger, something she couldn't control. You see, she was involved in things she shouldn't have been. And you were never supposed to be part of it." Ethan shook his head, his mind struggling to make sense of the words. "What are you talking about? My mother was just a normal woman. She worked, she took care of me, she loved me." Samuel let out a bitter laugh. "Loved you? Maybe. But she wasn't who she seemed. She was a part of something much larger. Something dangerous. And now, because of your mother's secrets, you're a part of it too." Ethan took a step back, his throat dry, his pulse quickening. "I don't believe you. You're lying." "I'm not lying," Samuel's voice dropped to a whisper. "But you will believe me soon enough. You can't hide from the truth forever, Ethan. The truth is coming for you." Before Ethan could respond, the man turned on his heel and began walking toward the black sedan. "Where are you going?" Ethan called after him. Samuel didn't look back. "You'll find me when you're ready to face what's been buried all these years. But trust me, boy. It's not going to be easy. And if you try to run, I'll find you. Just like I found your mother." Ethan stood frozen, watching as the man climbed into the car and drove off into the fading light. The sound of the engine seemed to grow fainter with each passing second, but the weight of Samuel's words remained in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ethan was left standing alone in the quiet street, his mind spinning with questions and a sense of dread that seemed to reach down into his very bones. What did Samuel mean by things your mother was involved in? What had she been hiding all these years? And why, after all this time, was Samuel Grayson finally coming for him? Ethan sat alone in his motel room, the walls pressing in around him like a suffocating vice. The silence was deafening. The phone message still burned in his mind, its cryptic warning reverberating through his skull. You shouldn't have spoken to him. If you value your life, you'll stop asking questions. His fingers trembled as he stared at the dead phone in his hand. The messages had come from an unknown number, and now it was just silent. The suddenness of it was unnerving. No answer when he called back. No trace of the number. Just empty space. A chilling reminder that someone, somewhere, was pulling the strings in this twisted game. A thought nagged at him. Who was really behind all of this? His mind returned to the black sedan. To Samuel Grayson's cryptic words. To the stories Margaret had shared. This was bigger than he'd thought. So much bigger. This wasn't just about his mother and the lies she'd buried, it was about him now. He was tangled in a web that had been spun long before he ever understood the stakes. Ethan clenched his jaw and rose from the bed, pacing the small room. His thoughts were a storm of confusion and fear. He couldn't just sit here. He couldn't let the silence consume him any longer. If Samuel Grayson truly had the power to make people disappear, then Ethan knew one thing for sure, he couldn't just stand by. He had to fight. But how? He thought back to Margaret's warning. The truth is coming for you. Margaret had known more than she'd let on. She had known about Samuel. She had known what Ethan was up against. Yet, she had refused to tell him everything. She had only given him pieces, small, jagged pieces that barely scratched the surface. And now, there was no going back. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Instead, he went through every piece of information he could find. The court filings. The old addresses. The names his mother had used in different towns. There had to be something he'd missed, something that would finally explain why Samuel Grayson was so desperate to silence him. The clock ticked on as hours turned into the early morning. Ethan's eyes were bloodshot, but he didn't care. He couldn't stop now. The web was too tangled, and he was determined to find the center of it. It was just before dawn when he stumbled across something that made him stop. A news article from a small-town newspaper in Pennsylvania, dated back to 1992. The headline read, "Local woman found dead in suspected murder-suicide. No suspects identified." The article was brief, but the details jumped out at him. The woman was named Linda Hayes, his mother's original name. The article described her as having been found dead in her apartment with a man, presumed to be her partner. The cause of death was initially reported as a suicide, but the police had later ruled it a murder-suicide after they discovered evidence of a struggle. But that wasn't what made Ethan's heart stop. It was the name of the man found with her. Samuel Grayson. The piece of the puzzle clicked into place. His mother hadn't just run from Samuel. She hadn't been just afraid of him. Linda Hayes had been in a relationship with him, a dangerous, volatile relationship. And Samuel wasn't just her abusive partner. He had been someone far more dangerous, someone connected to a network of criminal activity, a shadowy world Ethan couldn't even begin to comprehend. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was something far more sinister. Ethan's phone buzzed again, startling him from his thoughts. He grabbed it quickly, his pulse racing as he saw the notification. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're looking in the wrong places, Ethan. You don't know the truth. But you will soon enough." The message was short. But the implication was clear. Someone was watching him. Someone was directing him, guiding him toward the truth. But was it someone who wanted him to uncover it, or someone who wanted to make sure he never did? Ethan didn't know who he could trust anymore. He'd already made the mistake of trusting Margaret, of assuming she had all the answers. But now he realized she hadn't told him the full story. She had kept things from him, things that were clearly too dangerous for her to say out loud. She had been protecting him, yes. But from what? He had no choice now. He had to find her again. He had to confront her. There were too many questions, and they needed answers. Margaret's antique shop was still closed when Ethan arrived. He stood outside for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The silence of the street felt ominous, like a trap waiting to snap shut. He pushed open the door, and the bell above it jingled softly. The smell of old wood and leather filled his senses, as familiar as it was strange. Ethan stepped inside, scanning the room for any sign of Margaret. He didn't have to wait long. Margaret appeared from the back of the shop, her face pale and drawn. She looked at him with a mixture of apprehension and regret. "I knew you'd come," she said quietly. Ethan didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You knew about Samuel. You knew everything, didn't you?" Margaret's eyes darted away from his gaze. She didn't answer immediately, and the silence stretched between them like a vast chasm. Finally, she spoke. "I knew more than I should have," she admitted. "And I kept things from you. For your own safety, Ethan." "Safety?" Ethan's voice rose, raw with frustration. "Safety? You could have told me the truth. I could have been prepared for this. I could have known about Samuel, about what he really did to you, to my mother." "Your mother didn't want you to know," Margaret interrupted, her voice breaking. "She didn't want you to carry that burden. She thought if you didn't know, you could live a normal life. But she didn't realize what that would cost you. What it would cost her." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Margaret hesitated, then sighed. She walked over to a dusty bookshelf, pulling down a thick, leather-bound book. She handed it to him wordlessly. Ethan opened it, scanning the pages. It was a journal, his mother's journal. Her handwriting was slanted and shaky in parts, but it was unmistakably hers. "Your mother kept this hidden from you," Margaret continued. "She was terrified of Samuel, terrified of the people he was involved with. She never told anyone, not even me, what had really happened between them. But this journal, this tells the truth." Ethan flipped through the pages, and as he read, his stomach churned. The journal detailed his mother's escape from Samuel. How she had left him once, when Ethan was a baby, only to be dragged back by fear. She had fled to a small town in Ohio, where she'd assumed a new identity, changed their names. But Samuel had always been close, always lurking in the shadows. And when she thought she could finally start over, she discovered that Samuel's reach was far greater than she had realized. He wasn't just some angry ex. He was part of something much larger. A network of people with power and connections who moved in the dark corners of the world. People who could destroy anyone who stood in their way. The journal stopped abruptly, as if his mother had written herself into a corner she couldn't escape from. Suddenly, the air in the room grew thick with tension. Ethan slammed the book shut, his hands shaking with rage and fear. "She was trying to protect me," he muttered under his breath. "But what if it's too late now? What if he's already coming for me?" Margaret's face was grim. "He is. And he's not the only one." The sound of shattering glass echoed through the room like a gunshot, jolting Ethan from the dizzying swirl of emotions he had just experienced. He spun around, heart racing, every muscle in his body tensed. The front door of the antique shop was wide open, a jagged piece of glass scattered across the wooden floor. Margaret gasped, her face pale as she backed away from the door, her eyes wide with terror. "Get down!" Ethan shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind the counter. He couldn't see anything through the open door, but the sudden rush of danger in the air told him all he needed to know. Someone had come for them. "Who is it?" Margaret whispered, her voice shaking. "Who's out there?" Ethan crouched beside her, his hand still gripping her arm. "I don't know," he said, his voice tight. "But they're here for a reason. And it's not just me." Margaret's eyes flickered to the window where the shattered glass still lay scattered, glittering in the dim light. She looked as if she had seen a ghost. Her face drained of color, her lips trembling. "They found us," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I didn't think it would happen so soon. I thought we had more time." "What do you mean, we?" "Margaret, what is going on?" Ethan asked, his voice rising in frustration. She turned to him, her face etched with regret. "I should have told you everything from the start. But I didn't know how." And now, she broke off, her gaze darting toward the door once more. "Now it's too late." Ethan's mind raced. He could feel the cold air creeping through the broken window, the eerie quiet of the street outside suddenly suffocating. The footsteps had stopped. Whoever was out there was waiting. Watching. "Whoever is out there," he said, "they're not just after me. They're after both of us. They know too much." Margaret nodded grimly. "They always did." The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, until Ethan couldn't stand it any longer. He stood up slowly, scanning the shadows outside through the cracked door. Every instinct in him screamed to run. To get out of this place before whatever nightmare was coming for them made its move. But there was no place to hide. No safe haven left for either of them. The footsteps were back. This time, they were closer. A shadow passed the door, and Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. He couldn't make out any details, but the figure was tall, moving deliberately toward the shop. He could hear the soft scrape of boots against gravel, the heavy exhale of breath from someone whose presence felt far too menacing. He backed away from the door, his pulse pounding in his temples. "Get the gun," he whispered urgently to Margaret. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide, and then scrambled behind the counter. Ethan watched her move quickly but cautiously, her hand shaking as she reached for something hidden beneath the counter. When she returned, she was holding a small, black pistol, the weight of it heavy in her hand. She didn't say anything, only handed it to Ethan without a word. He took it from her, the metal cold and unfamiliar in his palm. He'd never fired a gun before. He didn't want to. But now, there was no choice. The door creaked as the figure stepped inside. Ethan held his breath. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice hoarse with fear, trying to steady his shaking hands. The figure didn't respond at first. Then, slowly, the shadowed form of a man emerged from the darkness. His face was partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and his long coat swirled around his legs as he moved with unsettling confidence. Ethan's grip tightened on the gun. "Samuel Grayson," the man said coldly, his voice low and unmistakable. Ethan's heart lurched in his chest. He didn't even need to ask how the man had found them. He knew the answer now. Samuel had always been closer than Ethan had realized. Always watching. Always waiting. "Why are you here?" Ethan demanded, trying to sound braver than he felt. Samuel didn't answer right away. He took a slow step forward, his eyes glinting in the low light. "You think you found the truth, don't you?" he asked, his voice dripping with mockery. "You think you've uncovered everything your mother tried to hide. But you haven't even scratched the surface." Ethan's grip on the gun tightened. He was so close to the answers now, but this man, was a wall he couldn't break through. "What do you want from us?" Margaret spoke up, her voice shaking but determined. "Leave us alone, Samuel." Samuel's smile was chilling. "I've been trying to leave you alone, Margaret. You know that. But your friend here," he said, nodding toward Ethan, hasn't been so good at listening, has he? Ethan's jaw clenched. He took a step forward, the gun steady in his hand. Tell me what you want. Now. Samuel's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. You really don't understand what you're up against, do you? He asked, his voice turning low and dangerous. Your mother wasn't just running from me. She was running from something far bigger. Something that neither of you will ever be able to outrun. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't take it anymore. He needed answers, now. You're lying, he spat. Everything you've said, everything you've done, it's all been to protect yourself. To cover up the truth. My mother isn't the criminal. You are. Samuel's eyes narrowed. You think you know the truth? That's cute, Ethan. But you're not even close. The truth is buried deep, deeper than you could ever imagine. And if you keep digging, if you keep pushing me, you'll learn just how deep it really goes. And when you do, his voice dropped to a whisper. You'll wish you'd never started. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. His fingers tingled as he held the gun, its weight suddenly too heavy in his hands. He didn't want to do this. He didn't want to be caught in this web of lies, in this spiral of violence. But there was no turning back now. I'm not afraid of you, he said, though his voice faltered. You should be, Samuel replied quietly. Just as the tension in the room reached its breaking point, a loud noise erupted from the back of the shop. A crash. Then, hurried footsteps, followed by a door slamming open. Ethan's head whipped toward the noise, his heart leaping into his throat. Another figure appeared in the doorway, this time someone he wasn't expecting. Margaret gasped. No, she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Ethan's pulse raced as the figure stepped into the dim light. He recognized him immediately. It was Detective Harper. The tension in the room was unbearable. Ethan stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest, as Detective Harper's steely gaze bore into him. The weight of the gun in his hand seemed to increase with every passing second. Samuel Grayson stood a few feet away, his face twisted into a mock smile as he watched the scene unfold. The air felt heavy, thick with impending danger. Ethan could barely comprehend what was happening. He had thought he had come to this moment for answers. But now, faced with Samuel, the sinister figure who had tormented his mother, and Detective Harper, who he had never suspected of being involved, everything felt surreal. The truth, whatever it was slipping further out of his grasp with every word spoken. Harper's eyes flickered from Samuel to Ethan, and then back again. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I didn't expect you to find out like this, Ethan, Harper finally said, his voice measured, almost regretful. But I guess I don't have much of a choice now, do I? Ethan's mind raced. Find out what? He demanded, though his voice wavered. What's going on here, Harper? What do you know about all of this? Harper sighed, a deep, drawn-out sound, like a man who had been carrying a heavy burden for far too long. Everything, he replied, his voice tinged with sorrow. I know everything. Margaret stepped forward, her face pale. She was trembling, but her voice was steady. Detective Harper, what are you talking about? You're involved in this, aren't you? Harper nodded slowly, but his expression remained unreadable. I've been involved from the very beginning, he said quietly. In fact, I'm the reason Samuel Grayson is still alive. Ethan's breath hitched, and the blood drained from his face. What? I know this is a lot to take in, Ethan, Harper continued. But your mother's death wasn't just a tragic accident. It wasn't a simple murder. It was part of something much larger than you can imagine. Something that's been going on for years. Ethan staggered back a step, the truth crashing down on him like a tidal wave. What the hell are you talking about? He demanded, his voice rising. What is going on? What was my mother really involved in? Harper ran a hand through his hair, his eyes flashing with guilt. Your mother was more than just a victim. She was an active participant in something that goes beyond all of this. The reason Samuel was after her, it wasn't just because she left him. It was because she knew too much. She knew things that could have destroyed the entire operation. The operation? Ethan repeated, his mind spinning. What operation? Who was she working for? Samuel's smile faded, replaced with a more serious expression. He stepped forward, his boots echoing against the wooden floor. Your mother was part of something far more dangerous than you realize, Ethan. You think she was just running from me, hiding from an abusive relationship. But the truth is, she was working with me. Ethan felt as though the floor had been ripped from under him. What? He gasped, his voice barely a whisper. No, that's not possible. Margaret's eyes widened in shock, and she took a step back, as though she, too, couldn't process what was being said. But Samuel wasn't finished. Your mother was involved in a criminal syndicate. A network of people who specialized in laundering money, illegal arms trade, and worse. She was an informant, an inside source. She knew everything. She had access to things you could never even imagine. And when she left me, she tried to cut ties. She thought she could escape. But there's no escaping this kind of life, Ethan. Once you're in for life. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribcage. No. That's not true. My mother wasn't a criminal. She was just trying to protect me. I told you, Ethan, Samuel said, his voice cold, your mother wasn't the innocent angel you thought she was. She was as deep into this world as I was. And when she tried to run, she became a liability. That's why she disappeared. That's why she faked her death. Ethan's mind reeled. Everything he had known about his mother, everything he had believed, had been a lie. The mother he had loved, the mother who had raised him, the mother he had mourned, she was part of this dark, treacherous world. He looked at Margaret. But she was staring at the floor, her face drawn in horror. Is this true? He asked, his voice shaky. Margaret, please. Tell me you knew nothing about this. Margaret slowly lifted her gaze to meet Ethan's. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. I knew she was involved in something. I didn't know how deep it went. When your mother asked me to help her hide, I thought I was protecting her. But I had no idea the danger we were really in. No idea that she was already dead to those people. Samuel let out a low chuckle. She wasn't dead, Margaret. She was alive. She was living under an assumed identity. And when she decided to come clean, she knew it would be the end. That's why she came to you, Ethan. That's why she tried to warn you. Ethan's head was spinning. So, you're telling me my mother didn't die in that apartment fire? She faked her death? Yes, Samuel said, his voice soft but firm. Your mother faked her death. She did it to get away from the life she was tangled in. But no one ever escapes that easily. You can run from people, Ethan, but you can't run from the consequences. The pieces were falling into place, but they were falling too fast, and Ethan couldn't keep up. So all of this, the messages, the threats, the lies, he shook his head, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion, this was all because of her? Harper, who had been silent up until now, spoke again, his voice low. It wasn't just about your mother. It was about you, Ethan. They couldn't let you live. If you knew the truth, if you kept digging, they'd have to silence you. And that's why I've been trying to protect you, even though I shouldn't have. I should have told you everything when I had the chance, but I thought I could shield you from the truth. I was wrong. Ethan looked from Harper to Samuel, his head spinning. You've been helping me all along? He could hardly believe it. Harper was a part of the police department, part of the system. And yet, here he was, admitting to his involvement in all of this. Not exactly, Harper said grimly. I've been trying to keep you alive. The people behind all of this, they don't care about the law. They don't care about right or wrong. They only care about power. And your mother knew too much. You were a threat. And that's why they sent Samuel here. Ethan's mind was a blur. He turned to Samuel. You were trying to kill me. Samuel's eyes softened, just for a moment. I never wanted to hurt you, Ethan. But you were a liability. You should have stayed away. You should have let your mother's death be the end of it. But you wouldn't stop digging. And now you've forced me into a corner. The weight of the gun in Ethan's hand felt like it was pulling him down, deeper into this abyss of lies and betrayal. He wanted answers. But at what cost?